Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of the Mental Brew podcast, conversations on high performance. Today we're very lucky to have Andy Mackin on. Andy is the owner of the Mackin Group. Andy, how are you?
I'm very good, Dennis. And yourself?
I'm very good, my friend. Thanks so much for coming on. I was actually only thinking today, you were the first person I asked to be on the podcast, and you're the first person to say yes. So I remember we talked a good while ago, but I remember after our chat, it was like, I actually have to start getting this podcasting rolling. So you're the inspiration behind this at the moment, Andy. So thanks for that.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Dennis. And we get the festivities out of the way. So happy Christmas and a happy New Year to you, sir.
Many happy returns to you and all the
And
family.
excuse the Christmas jumper.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. And Andy, I kind of want to get started, right? I want to make this, as I said to you, really applicable to business owners, essentially high performers, right? So starting off, why do you do what you do?
Because I love what I do. And like Steve Jobs always says, if you don't love what you do, you shouldn't really be doing it because it's hard, Dennis. Like getting, I will get into my routines and stuff later on, but ultimately, I love being able to solve problems. I love being able to look after our clients in a way that when they finish working with us or continue to work with us, they will wholeheartedly refer us and talk about us when we leave. And that gives me the kind of get up and go to get up in the morning. But ultimately, I love what I do. It's all about people. It's all about relationships. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah, look, I'll be honest with you. I would have come across yourself in the BNI and like the Mackin Group. It's a very very large company now. You're obviously operating in Ireland and America. And the one thing I want to touch on is before we get into habits and stuff is you constantly give back to local businesses in Cork and around the country on a weekly basis through the BNI. How I suppose how do you feel about the BNI in terms of you're still in it, you're a very very active member, even with I suppose the growth of your own company. Why is that so important to you?
There's a number of reasons, Dennis. Number one, I love the organization in terms of its philosophy, which is givers gain. So if you have no problem giving, then ultimately you'll have no problem receiving. But I
Mm.
think if you actually do give, you will receive.
Yeah,
It's one of those reciprocation things that happens that people will see you for what you do in terms of look, and he's always there trying to help out. If he can't help you, he might know somebody else who can. If he can give you a referral, he'll give you a referral. Because, and I would keep a lot of my intern referrals that we use for our businesses, and not just in Ireland but globally
mm.
within the BNI family. Like for example, Dennis, there's our accountant and our insurance provider in the US are both BNI members in the Silicon Valley chapter. We had a project with Airbnb many moons ago. The fire consultant and fire engineers that we used in the project were based in Denmark. So they're tried and tested. I have no problem working with them because they believe in that philosophy as well of givers gain. And ultimately, we've got referrals back from those people for different projects to help us expand globally. So, and that's just not on the health and safety side, that's on the recruitment side as well. But I love it. I just genuinely, and again, because it's about people, it's about building relationships. It's about not being a hunter, being the farmer. So like actually going in there, planting a seed and getting that coming to fruition maybe 6 months or 18 months or 2 years down the line. And that's on a continuous basis going forward. So that's why I love the BNI and the whole kind of givers gain concept.
And just when you started out, because I know we had a conversation previous, when you were starting out the fire safety or the safety business back in the day,
Yeah.
right? When did you realize that personal relationships and forming personal relationships were going to be really really important to you or to any business person that people can go, geez, Andy sound, I'm going to recommend Andy.
Hmm. Um, I don't know that I ever discovered. I think it's always been a philosophy for me, Dennis. I mean, I was always brought up, and my father, Lord Emerson, passed away last year. But his philosophy, even when we were younger, was that always treat people the way you want to be treated yourself. So,
Yeah.
and he would often say, like, you don't have to be nasty, or excuse my French, to be an arsehole in business to be successful. Like, you can be successful being a nice guy, treating people with dignity and respect, and getting that back in spades. I mean, I'm a firm believer in karma, the universe, and all that kind of stuff. So I think what goes out comes back in spades. So I don't think I ever kind of realized that relationships are important. I just always took it that treat your fellow man well, and that will continue. I probably honed maybe that kind of
Yeah.
um, philosophy or mantra as I got into the business through my kind of latter Navy days. But like relationships are always important because if you work well with somebody, stuff gets done. Like,
Absolutely, absolutely. And we, again, going back to the conversation previously, so I'm also a member of BNI. So for people listening, I'm a member of BNI, so I would reach out to Andy and we would have had a chat. There was a few things you said to me, Andy, that helped me massively, right? I suppose at the time I would have had doubts about this was starting a business, how I was going to grow, where I was going to get the clients from. Just with yourself and from your experience to date with your own business, whether it be, from when you're based in Cork or when you're based in America, has there been times where you've had doubts, and how have you kind of dealt with them, to kind of go, okay, this might be, a challenge or whatever else, but, I'm going to get ahead of it through A, B, and C, or whatever you kind of mechanism you would have.
yeah, yeah, I don't think I ever had doubts, Dennis, because when I started business, my expectations weren't very high.
Okay.
And that's been totally honest. I mean, if somebody told me back in 2004, like I was still in the Navy at the time, so when I started the business, the health and safety business, there was only just kind of a half day here and maybe a couple of hours on a Saturday morning,
Mm,
just to see was this something that I could do potentially when I was due to retire in 2006. But like if somebody had told me then that we would have a global business with 277, 280 people globally in 12 or 13 countries, I would have said they were barking mad. Because like I was never thinking like that. I was thinking, okay, and I remember having the conversation with my wife. I said, if I do this for 3 days a week, I'll be able to help out with the boys the other 2 days a week.
yeah,
My naval pension and the work that I'd be doing would be enough to get me by, and I'd be happy out. And my wife had always often said to me, said like, what is the story here? Like whatever happened to that part-time career we're talking about? I don't think it ever happened, you know?
yeah. But that's amazing. And how, I suppose, how did you grow into various countries? Like, was it an opportunity you saw, there's an opportunity in America? We'll maybe start something there. Was it something very natural, or was it kind of a deliberate move?
In some locations later on, it was a deliberate move. Initially, it was we followed our client. Basically, our client asked us would we help support them. Like the American thing was very interesting. So we were working with a huge multinational on an EHS project, and a couple of the guys that I was working with on the project were based in California. So I had to go over for a trip one time, and I remember the director saying to me, "So that listen, would you be interested in taking these two guys on board our contractors, manage our contract?" And I said, "Look, that's not what we do. It's like health and safety consultancy and training." And he goes, "But he said you mentioned this to me 6 months ago," and I goes, what did I mention? And he goes, you said that if we wanted to have the success in this project, that you would have to take these guys on full time. And I think at the time they were only spending maybe 10 or 15 hours on the project. So I had obviously planted a seed in his head, and 6 months later, the opportunity came back. And I said, okay, look, it's not what I'm doing, Steve. It's not what I want to do. I've never thought about project resourcing or recruitment or anything like that. It's health and safety consultancy and training. That's what we do. That's what we're good at. But I said, look, if you want me to, like, this is a favor to him basically.
Yeah,
And I wouldn't have thought that 8 years later we'd be employing 170 people in America, like working out of, I think it's 15 or 16 states, and we probably have people in another 5 or 10 states after that. But it's like anything else, Dennis. When the opportunity presents, you have two choices: do you walk through the door, or do you just close the door and keep on doing what you're always doing?
absolutely. No, and that's incredible. And just with, I suppose, global organization. So if someone rings me, and this is kind of a BNI pitch now of what I do, but if
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
rings me in, right, it's I work with the people, I'm working on performance, I'm working on the cultural side of things. How
Mm.
important is culture for you within your organization?
It's huge, huge. Like, I mean, we live and die, we hire and fire based on our core principles. And the very first value that we have, a core principle, is relationships matter. So everybody within the organization is treated with respect, dignity, um, whatever goes in the company in terms of how they perform, it has to be looked after in that they're getting the support to be successful. Like we the last thing I want to be doing is somebody to come into the Mackin group, either on the EHS side or the recruitment side, and be set up for failure. That doesn't bode well for me as an owner. It doesn't bode well for me as a company. Like, it just, it should always be about the people in your organization. I wouldn't have a global organization then. It's only for the people that are in it. They're making it successful with me. It's not me. It's not the Andy Mackin show. It's everybody. It's the 277 odd people or 280 people that we have. They get up every morning, do an honest day's work for their client, or if they're one of the internal teams, for the people that they look after or manage or lead. Um, all them guys. I'm only one little tiny cog in the overall machine. But the culture, you have to have a set of values that you live by,
Yeah.
and like that core value number one, like I said, relationships matter. If you're not living by that, you won't be here very long.
Yeah, and that's brilliant because it's one of the first things I would do, even going in with a sports team, would be we determine the values of the group, and that's what we'd operate from, and it's so important. And with, we'll say, hiring of maybe staff, right? Is there anything in particular you look at? So obviously, they have the qualifications, whatever job they're going for, so they've ticked that box. Is there anything in particular that you'd kind of look out for? Like, is it maybe their level of self-awareness? Is it their soft skills? Is it their emotional intelligence? Is there anything that you kind of go, this is something I look for in an employee? Or is it kind of just a feeling you get when you kind of have them in front of you during an interview?
Yeah, I think there's two slightly different answers for that. So if we're recruiting internally for our internal team, whether it
Mm,
be the US, whether it be the UK, Ireland, Switzerland, Hong Kong, whatever it may be, I think ultimately qualifications by and large by candidates are very, very similar.
mm,
Work experience usually for the type of role that you're looking for, you'll know yourself if somebody has the experience at that level that you're looking for. So they'll pretty much tick themselves. I think after that, you're looking for somebody that is that little bit self-aware, that is not afraid to take personal accountability for, if they make a mistake, put their hand up and say, listen, I shagged up there, guys, but I'm going to make this right by doing A, B, and C. That's
yeah,
fantastic. And a little bit of emotional intelligence, absolutely. But ultimately, it's a combination of all those things. And then will they fit internally to the culture we have existing in the company already? Because you could have one or two of those things and it might be great, but they just mightn't click or sit well within the internal teams.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we would look at that. For externally, then if we're looking at candidates for our clients, then we're very fortunate that a lot of our internal people have worked with a lot of our clients. So
yeah,
they understand the culture of those organizations. So again, you're back to qualifications, tick, 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 because by
yeah,
and large, they're not coming in front of us unless they have those boxes ticked anyway. So then will they fit in with, will this guy work well with Dennis? Will
yeah,
this guy work well with the team? Is he a guy that should be on his own? Is he more suitable to R&D where he could be left in a lab? And so we look at all those things, and that's where we've had the success because we've had that internal knowledge of internal organizations,
yeah,
and some of our people still work with them as well. Um, we have that kind of constant feedback that we know outside of the qualification, because that's a given. You have to have that to get
yeah,
in front of us anyway. Yes, Andy will fit in well with Dennis. They have the same type of personality. This is what Dennis is looking for, the guy that he wants to work with, or this is the kind of manager or leader that Andy's kind of looking for. So there's a perfect match there. So what you get then for us is long-term success. You get longevity in the position. Andy's very happy in his work. He's there 2 or 3 years down the line until Dennis doesn't need him, or Dennis might lead him for
yeah,
forevermore. It really depends. And we've had that with clients where we have a couple of people with one particular client in California that the first three people, they've been there 8 years as contractors.
well,
That's an extremely long time as a contractor to be with any client. But the client loved them, but they don't think they're a part of the client. They think they're a Mackin person, because we will treat our contractors exactly the same as we treat our internal staff. They get all the same benefits, all the same bells and whistles. They're treated the same, all that kind of stuff. So I mean that kind of stands us out from the
yeah,
normal kind of bum in a seat kind of contracting company that most people just put a bum in a seat and they don't check in, they don't make sure their person is set up for success. We take all that kind of stuff very, very seriously because that's part of our overall culture.
yeah, and that's brilliant. The business studies teacher now in me, that's ringing a bell. The hierarchy of needs, self-actualization. That you're appeasing all those, which is fantastic. And I suppose now I kind of want to just kind of pivot slightly and kind of look at, I suppose, yourself, just yourself within the business. So like usually successful business person, as you said, you're probably traveling regularly and whatnot. How do you find, just starting off maybe with time management, how do you find managing your time? Because I'm guessing if you look at your email now, your phone, there could be a lot of emails or text messages or calls to kind of get back to. How do you manage your time the way that you can be really efficient so that you can tick the box to get your business job done or your business stuff done, but also maybe spend time with the family, spend time with friends, etc.
I am probably more effectively now than I did back in the day. I was probably more of a headless chicken when I started off. Um, because I think as well, Dennis, you grow as an individual and you develop as an individual, and you study other people. I suppose if I the company will be 20 years old next October.
Well,
So if I break it into chunks and go back maybe to the start, I was still in the Navy, so I would have been kind of just dipping my fingers in and out and just trying to get a bit of experience of it, doing very, very basic services to kind of hone my skills. Um, Probably 5 years in, then we've had our first employee. I have become a leader then de facto because I now have an employee. So their wages have to be in the bank every week. There's an element of revenue and taxes that have to be accounted for every week. So I need to get off my backside and bring in an X amount of sales and then deliver the work as well. So there's a little bit more planning goes into that you have to be. You can't just say, yeah, you know what, I'll have a lie in on Monday, I'll get up at 10, and like there's a bit more structure has to come into it.
yeah,
Roll on probably to halfway to 10 years. We've got another 2 or 3 consultants. We've got a bigger portfolio of clients. We're now working with a number of multinationals that expect a certain level of service and standards. So again, you tweak your routines. So I would have been probably tweaking my routines all the time. And then even up into the last 5 years, then probably 2019, I kind of did it. I spent a lot of 2019 outside of being busy with work, but doing a lot of research on highly successful people. Like, what are
yeah,
these guys doing differently to me to be in that kind of top 5, that top 3% bracket? The Warren Buffett's, the Bill Gates, the Steve Jobs when he was around, the Bezos, the Zuckerberg. Like, what did Richard Branson, an icon of mine, what are these guys doing? And the kind of common threads amongst all of them was they were all ravenous readers. They all read a lot. They invested time in themselves for meditation, downtime, mind time. They ate well, nutrition, and they took care of themselves in terms of they trained regularly. And so I said, okay, if this, and I was doing bits of those, but
yeah,
not with any kind of great degree of success, for want of a better word. So I made myself a promise that starting 1st of January 2020, and you will see my posts on the books and stuff. So I started to say I'm going to read a book a month. So I read for 30 minutes, like I meditate, I get up around 5, half 5 at the latest, and usually around 5. I meditate for 25, 30 minutes. I read for 30 minutes, and then I go to the gym where I go for a run, depending on the weather. If the weather's nice, I'll run outside. If it's anyway cold or wet or damp, I just go to the gym and I'll do my run there and
yeah,
do a few weights and swim and stuff. But I'm back in the house then by probably 8:15. I'll check in with Asia for 45 minutes, maybe an hour. Emails there, any meetings that I have to do. I'll have a quick bit of breakfast and I'll be in the office by 10. And I'll be in the office till about 6. I'll go home, I'll have dinner with the family. That's a ritual. Finish off about 7:15, half 7. I'll check a few emails for an hour with the US and that side of the world. And then laptop goes off at 9 o'clock. But it took me 3 years to get to that kind of, yeah. And I said laptop off at 9, bed by 10:30.
yeah. Okay.
And it's Monday to Friday.
And just I get into all of it, but the one thing there really interests me. You said dinner with the family, that's a ritual. We'll say, was there a time or what's the danger of if, there's a businessman, so Dennis comes in, he kind of goes, oh, look, I'll have my dinner there in a while, Ashlyn. I need to answer emails, I need to answer calls, and that might go on for a week, that might go on for 2 weeks, that might go on for 3 weeks. So what would you see the danger in that being?
You're going to be single.
Yeah.
And because I'll use the little adage that again a good mentor of mine, Darren Hardy, always says, like, it's good or bad decisions, and Jim Rohn would have said this a number of times in his personal development stuff. Good and bad decisions are only good and bad decisions when you look at them in 20 years time, because
Yeah,
if you're doing those things consistently, no matter how insignificant they seem at the time, there is ramifications 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line.
yeah,
Like, if you're eating unhealthy now and you don't look at your diet, you're going to be overweight, giving yourself a high risk of diabetes, high risk of heart attack. No, don't get me wrong. And people will say, yeah, but you see guys like 25 stone and they're still here and they've no, that's rare. Like, you should always be giving yourself the best opportunity to have the best, longest, happiest life you can have. So I mean, those little insignificant things. So not having dinner with the family. And I was guilty of that then as well. Don't get me wrong. I'm no saint. But I made an effort to try and get that back. It's only an hour. I mean, if I'm going to, what's the difference between checking the emails when you come in the door or having dinner and checking the emails in an hour's time? There is none.
Yeah.
But you'll value that hour or more because it's giving you a break, a disconnect from what you were doing all day. And there's a little bit more clarity when you jump on the laptop. Plus, the family appreciate it, which
Yeah.
is even that to me is the giving back. Selfishly, it's like I'm having dinner with the family. They're going to love me more. But
Yeah.
not that cynical, but
Yeah.
they do because they appreciate the time you're spending with them. And it
Yeah.
could be myself and Marion on our own. It could be one of the kids. It could be two of the kids. But we make an effort.
Yeah.
Whoever's there, it's a busy household, so the lads are training and working
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff. But if we're there at 6:30, whoever's in the house, we'd sit down and have dinner together. No phones, no laptops. If there's nothing to say, there's nothing to say. But inevitably, there's some conversation comes up and that kicks things off. So that's the way I look at those things.
That's brilliant. And kind of going back to getting up at 5,
Mm.
um, would say what does that do for you? Or what does that do for Andy Mackin? That sense of kind of routine. Like we'll say if tomorrow you decide, look, I'm gonna have a lie until 10, the next day have another lie until 10, like does that throw you off? Would that throw your mood off? Or is it kind
Oh,
of gotten to a
absolutely.
stage
Yeah,
now
it
where
does. Well, it does, Dennis, because again, you're back to those little insurmountable decisions that actually will impact over time. Because you know yourself how hard it is to actually kind of really foster in and dig in and get a hardened routine
yeah,
of habits, depending on what you're doing. And it's as easy not to do. Like
yeah,
it's easy to get out of the habit.
yeah,
And the funny thing about habits, and again, I'll use the great Jim Rohn in this. He said the great things about habits is what's easy to do is also easy not to do.
yeah,
So getting up at 5 is easy for everybody to get up at 5, but there's other things you have to do to make that happen. Now, it's not hard to get up at 5. It is if you only went to bed at 12.
yeah,
Like so it's all those kind of give and takes. And then it just comes down to how disciplined do you want to be. But what it does for me as an individual, it's that sense of clarity when I'm looking after myself, knowing that I'm giving myself the best possible chance to be efficient and effective in the work that I do for the day. It's given me the chance to be healthy and have longevity in my fitness and vitality for years to come. So again, that's a selfish thing for me. So that I've given up a lot of things, and I'd be disciplined enough. Having that military background does help.
yeah,
But like discipline is taught. I mean, it's a brain skill that's taught. But
yeah,
you have to do the first one, then you have to do the second one, you have to do the third one, and
yeah.
just build it up over time, consistently over time. Back those
Brilliant.
little decisions.
And would you say consistency has been, I suppose, a big tool for you to get to where you
Yeah,
are? Besides even the habits the last few years, but even with your business over the last 20.
100%, 100%, and even like for the BNI, like yourself, Dennis, if you're consistent with the kind of 4 pillars that you'd be doing, like do your one-to-ones,
Yeah,
prepare your 60 seconds, look for your referral. Yourself, if you're consistent over 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 weeks, you see the results.
yeah, yeah,
So you apply it to anything you do. If you're consistently going to your son's soccer training on a Tuesday and a Thursday night, 3 or 4 weeks later, he notices you're there every week. So
yeah,
then to go back to what you said earlier, the night you're not there, he notices that even more because the expectation and the habit has been formed in his mind that, like,
yes,
so it goes right across life. Like we have all the choices we make are simple. Whether you do it or don't do it, they're all simple choices. They're not easy, but they're simple. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And for anyone who's listening and doesn't follow Andy on LinkedIn, I would highly recommend it. Andy, you put up your one book a month. You put up a little synopsis of it. I find it brilliant because I'll be honest, I never was a big reader, but
mm.
we'll say now,
Dennis, neither was I.
really,
Before I started that reading, and I called it a challenge in 2020 because it was a challenge. I probably read about maybe 6 or 7 books in the previous 15 years.
stop.
Yeah. And
Wow.
that's honestly, and you could ask my wife that and she'd tell you, and they're probably still at home. I would have read probably Richard Branson's autobiography, Alan Sugar, one of his books. I half read a Bill Clinton. I'd been a big Jeffrey Archer fan. I probably read 2 or 3 of his books, The Early Cain and Abel, and A Quill Full of Arrows. And that's probably about it.
Yeah. And what do you get from reading now?
Knowledge. Jesus, like you get so much kind of, even like the likes of Atomic Habits. Just
Yeah,
how you refine a habit, how you introduce a habit, how you get out bad habits. I mean, who doesn't want to read that? I mean, it's a fantastic book.
yeah,
The 5 a.m. Club, another fantastic book, just on your philosophy and how you look at things in life, and what you give comes back. Probably feeds into a bit of giver's gain. The Go Giver, that definitely feeds into the BNI philosophy. Another great book by Bob Berg and David Mann, I think is his name. Um, so yeah, there's some fantastic reads there. So like you get great tidbits of information
yeah,
across that you can use for yourself in your own personal development, that you could probably use in your business, in terms of how you manage people, how you treat people. So there's always something. It's like watching a training film. Like, you will get certain points out of a training documentary or a training presentation, or
yeah,
that are actually applicable to you at the time.
yeah,
And you could do that training in 6 months' time and get something completely different out of it, because that wasn't what you were concentrating on, what you needed at the time. The same as reading a book. You could read a book this month, and you could read it in 2 years' time, and you'll pick up different things out of the book, because I think you're always kind of subconsciously looking for something
yeah,
to fulfill something, to fill a need,
yeah.
and you'll get it at that time. But your need is going to be different in 2 years' time, or down the line.
Actually, what you said there is very, very interesting. I would have had a previous podcast with Brian McCormack. He is from the Tullamore chapter of the BNI. But same thing, there's a book, I can't remember the name of the book now, but he reads a book once every year, and he says he gets something new out of it each year. It's like it's a
Mm.
new find for him. We had a list of books there as well. I have to get the names and send them on to you, but I have a few of them myself here, and I find is for me, books never really a thing. I might read the odd sporting autobiography because sport was my thing, but now I can do a performance mindset. I just eat it up. It's just
Yeah.
anything to get, as you said, that little bit of information that you
Mm.
can bring back to your business or to my consultancy to kind of help a client and offer value is key.
Yeah.
And Andy, I suppose when I'm kind of thinking of my business, right, and what I do for it, right, I I kind of would be we all want a few quid to keep the lights on and the wolves away from the
Mm.
door, right? But for me, what drives me is a fear of people saying that he did a bad job. So, like, you want to offer value to the customer,
Mm.
you want to kind of impress him and do a really good job. What's kind of driven you over the last couple of years, or what's driving you at the moment, kind of going forward? Has it changed? Has there been a different kind of shift in terms of what we've driven you? Is it kind of different stages within the business life cycle?
I think, well, it definitely shifts, because I think your goals and aspirations should always be revised every year, and they should always be pushed out a little bit further. Because if your success kind of indicator, Dennis, is you want 20 new clients in 2023, and you're at 24 at 23, well, then your goals need to be way bigger. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to go aim for 23. You've already done it
Yeah,
in 23. So like your goal should not be 23 and 24. You got to push it out, because I think your goals should always be just a little bit out of reach, but still achievable, because it
yeah,
makes you kind of stretch that a little bit further. So I think naturally, um, your goals and aspirations and vision for your company, and your consultancy or practice, whatever it may be, should differ every year. Like, or you should have at least a 2 or a 5 year plan, or a 10. Like, we would have done 5 year plans before, but after COVID, the kind of 5 year plan went out the window. So
yeah,
I kind of think 12 months is enough to do it. Even some people even break it down to a quarter. Like, we
yeah,
just get the quarter over and really execute that. But I think 12 months is probably a good indicator. Break it into your 4 quarters, and have milestones and benchmarks that you need to get to, that's going
yeah,
to shape your business. And I think, like, everybody should be doing that regardless, because what your vision is for this year should not be the same vision for next year. And that's what's kind of changed my business as we've gone over the years. Like I said, I had very little expectations when I started off. It was, I'm going to do this 3 days a week.
yeah,
I'm going to have enough to pay my bills, make a few quid, pension on top of that, I'll pay the mortgage, and I'll be a few bob over, maybe take the family for a holiday, whatever.
yeah,
Um, but as you get a little bit of success, then you kind of go, okay, well, if I can do that, maybe I'll just aim for maybe 2 of those next year.
yeah,
And then when you see in the next year, and your revenue has doubled or increased by 50% or 25%, you say, oh, wow, okay, this is
yeah,
something in this. But
yeah,
see, subconsciously you're feeding into the old, it's all that cycle, like you start gaining that kind of inner confidence that you are doing a good job, or that you can do it. And look, don't get me wrong. you've probably done it as much as I have, and I know I've definitely done a lot. You've made mistakes, but I think the big thing is you have that accountability. You put your hand up and say, "Listen, guys, I'm sorry, we fecked up there, but this is how we're going to sort it." The old head in the sand adage doesn't help anybody. So you are striving for a kind of a standard and a quality 100%. But in terms of your expectations, visions, goals, deliverables, all that kind of stuff, that feeds into your overall vision for the company. Mine, and I've no qualms in sharing. I've shared it in many a podcast. My short-term goal over the next 2 years is to hit revenues of $75 million by the end of 2025, 150 million by 2030, and I want to float on the stock exchange in the early 2030s. No defined date yet, but that's out there. So that's 7 years out for me, Dennis, like probably 10 years in the
Yeah,
next 10 years. That's loosely. But what we do every year then is we put a strategy in place to get us to the next step of that
yeah,
we know that's going to be required. And that could be increasing clients, revenues, acquisitions that is going to give us access into new markets or different territories or whatever it may be. But that's the way I do it now. I wouldn't have always done it that way. But again, you grow in confidence over the years. You listen to other guys, how they plan their growth, how they strategize on their growth. And it's not always growth as well. It's just how to be a better company, how you treat your people, what your value add is, all that kind of stuff, all feeds into your overall vision.
Andy, that's fantastic. And you actually beat me to my last question, what your goals were. So now we know them. That's fantastic. And I always find putting it out there, you hold yourself accountable. So I did it myself with the podcast. I did it myself kind of with a couple of jobs, even talking to the wife about that I want to get. And it kind of put me under pressure because when you keep it there and you keep it in your head going, oh, I get that going. Yeah, I get that going. It doesn't happen. So I think it's great. Look, we've come to the end. I just want to thank you for the last 35 minutes. Absolutely gold there for any business owner or anyone who wants to be a high performer. I'd love to have you on again at some stage. This was
Oh,
absolutely
delighted,
great.
Dennis. Anytime. Yeah, anytime.
Perfect, Andy. Thank you.